Good evening, everyone. My name is Ken Mejia-Beal, and I am the chair of the Democratic Party of DuPage County. This evening, we are honored to have Representative Michelle Mussman here with us today, and we are going to cover her career, the committees that she is a part of, and where she sees us going in the upcoming year and in the upcoming election. Thank you for joining us this evening, Representative Mussman. How are you doing today?
I'm good. So glad to be here with everybody. Thank you.
Well, we are glad to have you here, and I am pronouncing your name correctly. Yes,
Michelle
Representative
Mussman.
Mussman? Okay,
Yes.
there we go.
Yes. People
I
like to
like
make it fancy and go old German with the Mussman, but it's just Mussman.
I almost went fancy and then I said I'm gonna stick to regular and then maybe it is I'm pronouncing it right, so I'm happy.
Yep.
So if it's okay with you, I want to jump right in because I have so you've been a state representative since 2010. That's when you were elected.
Yes.
What keeps you motivated to continue serving?
The people in my community. It's it's fascinating. The job is constantly changing. So the job that I started with in 2011 does not feel like the same job that I have today, even though there are a lot of similarities, right? And it's multiple jobs in one. You have the legislative work that you are doing as a group on the budget and with other people's bills. You have the bills that you are working on and cultivating and ushering through, and then you have the work that you're doing back in your own community to try, as you're moving collective community issues forward, and then you're also helping people one-on-one. So there's plenty to do. It's very diverse. There's always something new, which is really exciting,
And you
and I
seem to
I love
enjoy it.
that.
And I was just, yeah, you seem to enjoy it. So that's definitely a plus because sometimes I've met a lot of folks that have been down there for a while and you get the feeling that they're in it, but they don't want to be there. But I always get the vibe from you that you're really happy to be there and excited to be there.
Yes, it is a
Good.
constant challenge. It's a very difficult job. It is I will be very honest and say it is an emotional roller coaster. There are very
Mhm.
high highs, there are very low lows. It's been a very difficult journey, I think, for the state over time. We've had a lot of financial difficulties. We've had a lot of struggles with the administration or with the different parties or the different individuals, kind of getting on the same page on different issues. None of this is easy. We're dealing with very, very difficult topics and an inability of resources and money to address all of them. And then you're trying to figure out how to distribute your resources as best you can. And it's hard. It's hard to know that you're leaving needs unmet. It's hard to disappoint people. It's hard to cause people anxiety or disappointment if they're worried that the policy that you're creating isn't going to be good for them and their families overall. And you're not going to know until after it's passed and it started to go into action. But that's a hard thing to carry. But you're always optimistic that you're slowly driving forward to a more positive place.
That is the perfect way to state that. Thank you for putting it so that was perfect.
Oh, good.
That was
Good.
perfect. So my next question for you, you serve on the committee for adoption and welfare. Sorry. What are some changes that you're looking forward to that you would like to see in that area? Where do you just kind of walk us through that?
There is so much. There is so much right now when we talk about children of all ages, right? We have this conversation about how to have a healthy pregnancy, how to have a healthy delivery, how to make sure that those birth to 3 years and those 3 to 5 years are as robust as they can be for the moms, for the families, for the babies. You want to make sure that you have affordable childcare, robust childcare, accessible childcare, right? If you're working the 2 a.m. shift, the local early childhood center might not be open for you. And what are you doing then, right? And what's best for your youth? We're evaluating how it gets paid for. We're evaluating the people who serve in those roles, right? In a lot of instances, they are that first teacher, but they're not always considered with the same professionalism as a licensed teacher who teaches in an older grade. We often treat them and pay them as if they are glorified babysitters. And there's a question of whether or not there's more to that. And again, if you want it to be available in our communities and accessible and well staffed, how do you create that atmosphere to make sure that's working, right? And if you're going to talk about, children in the foster care system, children in the adoption system, children maybe who are experiencing stress and their families experiencing stress and they've been identified by DCFS, what does that look like, right? We know that Black and brown children are often over-identified in DCFS, and many of those are coming out of problems with poverty and not actual neglect or abuse. And so what are you doing to address the needs of the family before it gets to a stage like that? Or what are you doing to make sure that once it's been identified, the family is getting appropriate support so that they are okay and we don't have to worry about a child being taken from the home? Anytime DCFS interacts with a family, even just an interview, it's traumatic for everyone. It's traumatic for the parents and it's traumatic for the child. So if the goal is to prevent trauma, you caused trauma. And so we're becoming more cognizant of that, right? And certainly after the high profile sad death of one of our DCFS workers, we have to ask questions about what we're doing for our frontline staff too. Are they equipped with the proper tools? And if not, what do we need to do to improve that situation? There are so many angles that need our attention when we're talking about how to best care for the children in our state, whether they're living with their own families, whether or not they're living with other families, or whether or not they're our own wards. What are we doing over the spectrum of their lifetime to make sure that they have the best possible outcomes? Yep.
Yes, thank you. Thank you
So
for
much.
walking me through that. No, because it's a very important aspect of what you do. Is one of the most important committees a person can be on.
Yeah.
And it is such a intersection of so many things. It's an intersection of you know, abuse often, and you can probably agree with me, if the child is being abused, there is often times where the wife or the girlfriend or the mom is being abused also, or the poverty. There's a lot of intersections there. So that's why I wanted to jump into that. So thank you for answering for me. Um,
Absolutely.
Thank you. So my next question is, you are a former president of your local PTA. What are your thoughts surrounding what I will call the mayhem in our school district meetings lately?
I think it's a symptom of just the high anxiety and distress that we are all feeling, right? We all want what's best for our children. And if you feel powerless to ensure that's happening, right, that manifests in a lot of ways. And I think these are all anxieties that have always, brewed and simmered at all schools at all times over different issues, right? I know when we had the first child with a peanut allergy and a peanut free classroom, that was shocking to families that they couldn't do the things that they were used to doing. They couldn't bring birthday cupcakes, or they couldn't, have Halloween candy, or do things that they were used to. And it shook them. It shook what they had envisioned was going to be the experience for their child, and they became very protective. So now escalate that 10,000 times and now say, not only is your child not going to get the birthday cupcake I thought they were going to have, they're not even in school and everything is virtual, or they're wearing a mask, or, are they not getting what they need on such a much deeper level, right? You see all of our children now have what are called ACEs, which are basically traumatic events that happen at some point in their lives that interferes with their ability to come to school and be ready to learn. And that can be any number of things. But right now we know COVID has caused all of our children some sort of a trauma. And as a parent, to see that and again feel powerless to stop the thing that you think is hurting your child, whether that's not being in the classroom, whether that's not being successful at Zoom classes, or being with their friends, or getting to do extracurriculars that really are meaningful to them, or just wearing a mask that every day bothers them and irritates them and is a constant reminder that things are not right, and you want that better. I mean, I think that's really what you're seeing, is that anxiety and that fighting to want to protect. And we're all coming at it from different directions. For some people, they want the masks and all of that gone, and that's what they feel is best for their kid. And for other people, they want more masking and more distance and more virtual. And when you have these polar opposite feelings rubbing up against each other, this is it. This is people people in distress, and you see it in lots of other settings too. But I think school, again, it's so primal for all of us. We've all been to school. We all have memories of school. We all have aspirations of what we want school to be for our children. And if school doesn't go well for our children, again, there's lifelong ramifications. This is huge. We got to get it right. And so that anxiety is understood, but it's also not helpful. And I think we feed off of each other's anxieties. And as somebody raises their voice or raises their tension or becomes physical and other people have to react to that, it just builds. And then we're not commiserating with each other. We're not sharing the experience. We're not trying to work together in a healthy way toward a productive ending. And that is very hard,
Yeah. Do you think some of it, and I might be projecting a little bit of my own personal feelings here, because I do agree with the anxiety, but do you think some of it is simply just a little bit of rage that is misguided, just with, because my thing is, and I've said this before, I understand the parents, but we now have groups like the Proud Boys showing up at our school board meeting. So I do believe that the parents are anxious, but I also think a lot of these outside groups are a little bit of an opportunist for rage, or opportunistic for the parents' anxiety a little bit. Just a little
I
bit.
don't disagree. Yes,
Okay.
I think that there are organizations or people that if you are worked up and you have strong feelings about an issue for whatever reason, and you are looking for opportunities to amplify your message and get people to rally around that and sort of build your coalition. Yes, I think that there are people who are taking advantage of this moment of high anxiety to do that. And that is not helping us anymore.
No, not at all.
It was already hard, and that's not making it any easier. Yes.
No, not at all. My next question is probably going to be a hard one. When you look at your district, if you had to, and I'm not going to say pick the number one issue, because I know that it's probably a culmination of issues, but if you had to pick an issue to really address within your district that you want to tackle, what issue would that be?
My residents would say property taxes are the biggest issue that they're concerned about house to house.
Mhm.
And I think some of that also speaks to a question of housing availability. At the end of the day, everyone needs core, stable housing and the dignity of housing. And I think that it's inadequate for an awful lot of our groups. I think that you have seniors who want the dignity of staying in the home that they've had for years and that they've loved and cared for and they feel safe in. But sometimes I think the home is not a good fit for them. It's a 4-bedroom house with stairs and a yard and a driveway that needs snow plowing at a time when you may not be able to really maintain that any longer. And it can be incredibly expensive and it can be incredibly isolating at the end of the day. And I think I'm concerned that that's problematic, but we've not really given our seniors the opportunity to choose other places because we don't have enough other affordable places to step down or step into. And we're not also addressing the stigma of maybe it's okay to not live in your house till the very end. And other choices are not a sign that there is something wrong or you're not able to maintain it. And I think that's an issue. I would also say that we have a growing body of people with disabilities who live in our community and want to live in our community and want to be included in our community. And we don't have enough affordable and diverse options for them either, right? So we're not being inclusive, and it's pushing people to live in settings that ultimately aren't perhaps great for them in the long term. They're staying with their families for a long time, which is not allowing them to live an independent adult life in the way that I think that everyone would envision for them and they would envision for themselves. And at some point, as their parents age and maybe no longer able to take care of them, now you foster an environment in which they've not learned an alternative living plan for themselves, and changing at a difficult point in their life is even harder. So if the goal is to make it so that they are living a good life and they're not traumatized by change, you're ultimately not going to be able to protect people from that in the long run, depending on what their skill set is. And for many other people, it's forcing them to live in other group kind of homes that are not the kind of places that they would envision for themselves, and the independent life that they would like to have for themselves. And I think we as a society honestly have grown beyond that, but
Mhm.
our housing opportunities don't match that philosophy. And I think that's unfortunate. We also have people that have, problems with addiction or problems with mental illness, and they need supports to live independently and well in our community. And when we aren't able to provide those things, they continue to slide into decline. They're getting their needs not met. And again, no one's living their best life. It's not a win-win for anybody. It's not saving money in the long run. And we know that stable housing is the foundation from which people with mental health problems, people with addiction, or people with physical health problems can get better. Because if you, whatever medication you're taking, if you're living on the street, or you're sofa surfing, or you're living in an unhealthy environment with your family because you have nowhere else to go, it's not healthy, and those supports aren't really sticking, and therefore you're not really getting better and more stable. And so again, it's a loss for everyone. So I think a variety of housing settings and a variety of affordability for all of these needs, that is huge, and it's uncomfortable to talk about. It's a change to maybe what's in your community now, and you're going to worry, does it make sense? Are my property taxes going to change? Is the quality of my neighborhood going to change? Are people going to move in that I don't know and I'm not comfortable with? We have these anxieties, and so what we have right now isn't working, and yet we're afraid to change to something else. And I think it's doing many of us in the community a disservice. Again, I think it's not a service to our seniors or our veterans or our friends with disabilities, or many of our family members who are struggling and need support. So
Thank you so much for your candor on that question, because it's very complex, and thank you for hitting it
yeah,
head on. Um, my next question for you, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, what are some of your ideas for making mental health, um, uh, receiving mental health care more accessible? Um, because if we have a lot of programs here in Illinois, but a lot of folks don't know we have them and they're not accessible. So how can we
yeah.
make them accessible?
Um, I think we're starting to do a better job of removing stigma. I think a lot more people are self-identifying that they know something is wrong, that they know that they have anxiety or depression and that they need help. But what happens when you reach out, right? There are not enough mental health care professionals in our community. So if you call, very often you're left with really long waiting times. So you're not even getting in for an initial appointment. And then it's hard to get follow-up appointments. It's hard to get your medication regulated. Even if you can access certain things, if they're told you can have an appointment, well, what if you don't have any transportation? Then you can't go to the appointment. And then you're going to ask, well, what about telehealth? Well, is it allowed by your insurance company? Do you have broadband coverage? Can you even access that? Do you even have an electronic device by which you could access telehealth if you wanted to? And is your insurance going to pay for it? If you need addiction treatment and your treatment is supposed to be 40 days, but your insurance company covers 30 days, it may not work. And if you need to make multiple visits, as is very likely the case, most people with addiction are not cured one time through a treatment center. They're going to need multiple episodes of moving through that situation. Is our healthcare system set up to take care of that? We don't have enough residential facilities right now for any of the groups of people that we're trying to assist, especially our youth. And then a lot of times the funding doesn't work together. If you have an addiction, chances are you were trying to treat a mental illness. And so if your insurance pays for the addiction or for the mental illness, but not both of them together because you need to heal both of them together, well, that's a problem. And what are we doing to identify that and helping those funding sources braid better? I think that is huge. And again, the housing element. If you don't have stability, if you don't have an address, where are you going home? And how are you getting proper sleep, getting proper nutrition? How do you have an address so that you can apply for a job? Because if I want you to have a job, they want you to have an address, right? So,
Yes.
all these things work in concert with each other. And when those pieces are missing, they don't fit together properly, and people really don't move forward and heal properly. And I think that's a huge problem.
Thank you. I 100% agree. Thank you so much. And now, my last question is always a fun question. So my question for you, Representative, is if you could live in one movie from beginning to end, um, what movie would you like to be in for that 2 to 3 hour period?
I was trying to figure that out. And so many movies, you're constantly changing sets, right? So, like, but I will tell you, hands down, my favorite movie is Princess Bride.
Okay.
So you get all the action, you get the rustic farmy stuff and the views, and you get running through the forest, and you get the castle. I mean, I like
Okay.
that stuff.
I
So
like it.
exciting. Yep.
And it's nothing too crazy, nothing too like my favorite movie is Independence Day. I have
Ooh.
no desire to live through Independence Day though. So I think my answer to that question would probably be I couldn't even answer something really light and fluffy that doesn't threaten my life in the interim. I don't
What kind
know.
of movie is that though? Then there's no plot line. Like there's got to
Uh
be something
I'm guessing
wrong.
maybe like
Hmm.
the SpongeBob movie. I I think I wouldn't make it through. I have to
I
think
could see
about
that.
that. So if someone wants to volunteer for your campaign or reach out to your campaign or donate, where do they go?
Most of those access buttons can be found on votemichelle.org. You can always email me at votemussman@gmail.com. So I would love to hear from you. I have a Facebook page for the campaign, and I have a Facebook page for the for my state work. So many things have to be kept separate. So please
Mhm.
visit my Facebook page, because the Facebook pages are generally where you get most of the most active and recent updates for this is the program that I'm having, or this is information that I'm sharing. So I do encourage people to follow on Facebook.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I can't wait to see you on the campaign trail. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us this evening, Representative.
Thank you, Ken, and everyone.
Thank you guys for joining.